Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Hammock Chats. Oh, I gotta get on the hammock. Okay. I just put that together myself. All right. Where will this not get knocked over? Probably here. Okay, get on the hammock, because why not? Is this, alright. Yeah. What is that? Okay, alright. Yeah, welcome everybody. And installed something crawling on me. I gotta look before I. What is that? Okay, well, we're already in it. So yeah, they got installed the new lights, bright lights by the pool, because I guess they wanted to discourage the whatchamacallit, all of the scoundrels and rapscallions with their marijuana and their alcohol and whatever debauchery would go on in the pool area. So we got these lights now, and they're very bright, and they come in through the blinds, and I don't use night lights anymore because of that. So, but it also illuminates the balcony out here, so you can actually see my face now. Anyway, it is 8:31 p.m. On Friday, November. Well, let me think about this. 22nd. Final answer. It's 2024. Current temperature is 58 degrees. Or it might be 57 by now, actually. I don't know. Upper 50s. But yeah, we got a lot to cover. We got a lot to cover here. So since my last one, which was October 16th, I believe, a lot has happened. But more importantly, fall is here. And we're finally, like the last time, just like I said, was a one-off event. It was just one day where the high was below 80. And then it went right back to summer-ish patterns. And then now, the last few days, it's finally been cooler. And last night was the first night I had the doors open all night. And now today, the high was 68, so that felt good. And tonight's low is 46. So that's the kind of weather I like. Yeah, driving home today, it was like 7 o'clock, 7:30, which it's dark now. Ever since the clocks went back, it's pitch black by 6 o'clock. So I'm still kind of getting used to that. It's like it feels like it's midnight, and I'm like, oh, it's 6:15. Okay. Yeah, so it starts cooling down like immediately. It just goes, there's like daytime mode and then nighttime mode, and it just goes right to nighttime. So, and last night was my first time night knocking in a while. I mean, I did a little bit of night knocking, but like actually like several hours of it. I knocked doors until 8 o'clock, and it was a solid 2 hours of just pitch black, which reminds me I gotta order more Christmas light necklace on Amazon as soon as I'm done with this. But man, another plane? Aye. But all right, hold on. Let me wait for this plane. Okay, there we go. But yeah, so we're finally in a cooler weather pattern now, where all the lows are below 70, and quite a few of them are below 60, so that's good. So probably more frequent hammock chats as well. So if I don't get all the way caught up this time, it's no big deal, because I'll probably do another one within the next few days. But yeah, so let's start off picking up right where we were, I guess. So October 16th. I haven't rewatched that particular video. Smells like someone's rolling a fat one out there. See, the lights don't do anything. Anyway, so yeah, it's the I haven't rewatched the last one, and oh yeah, someone's getting high as a kite. But yeah, I haven't rewatched the last one in a while, so I'm not 100% sure what was discussed there. I mean, I have an idea, but so I'm trying to remember like what was going on at that time. I know that shortly after, I went into sort of a manic period for about 10 days or so, where I had, or thought I had a girlfriend or love interest at least, and it's been a while for that, because I haven't had a lot of romance in my life really, but it's few and far between for me. It has been. So I don't want to give too much specifics, but girl that I used to work with, and we had kind of had some experiences together outside of work, and she really had me convinced that she was attracted to me for my personality, and a lot of factors, and we would go over each other's places, and be at parties, and we would go downtown sometimes, and just hang out, and it was fun, honestly. And she's not like a ideal partner for long term or anything, but I just thought that it was cool, to have something like that in my life. It was better than not having it. And anyway, so we worked together for a while, and then she left the company, and we had a phone conversation. I called her when I found out, and she insisted that her getting closer to me and making advances on me and everything had nothing to do with work, and that she just liked me as a person. And so to illustrate that point, I had asked basically for clarification that we would still keep seeing each other, and so she suggested going on a date, and which we haven't really been like on an official date. We had kind of just hung out, and so she suggested it, and I was like, okay. And so we've picked a day and a time and a place, and I put it on my calendar, and I was like, all right, so I'll see you then. And so that day was 10 days out, which I guess should have been an indicator to me that it wasn't priority to her. But me being excitable as I tend to be, I was very thrilled about that, and I kind of had this was consumed by this feeling that I couldn't really control. Like, I couldn't even rationalize it, because I wasn't totally crazy about her as a person overall, but I just felt very attracted to her and just wanted to be around her, and it was kind of this sense of it coming from a more pure place than in the past, it seems, because it wasn't motivated just by sex or lust or anything like that. It was just it was more. It just felt like a higher frequency, if that makes any sense. But so those 10 days, life was good actually. Even though I didn't see her or talk to her at all during that time, they say love is not the feeling you get when falling in love isn't something that happens when you're with someone, but what happens in the absence of them, or something like that, or when you're alone. Falling in love happens when you're alone. So I guess that's what it was. Um, but so I'm very curious, like where that would have went. But if you haven't pieced it together already, that date never happened. And yeah, I got stood up, you could say, and I haven't seen her since. So, but anyway, but I learned a lot from that, and from that time, I learned a lot about myself because, I've been in love before, but I guess I just needed a reminder on what it's like, and life just gets better, honestly. Like, things don't bother me as much. And I just seem to care more, honestly. Like, I put more effort into cleanliness, hygiene, self care. I have more, like, self esteem, I guess, more like self value. And, I'm just more, just operating on a higher frequency is just the best way I can describe it. And so I guess it's true that love is the highest, highest vibration feeling. So, so that was cool. At least if I had some kind of positive influence on my environment or anyone I came in contact with or anything during that time, then I guess something came out of it. But so naturally, the rubber band effects of that, I went kind of the opposite direction and had a crash from that when I came to the realization that this was not going to happen. But unlike in the past, it really only lasted maybe like 2 days, 2 or 3 days, and then I got over it. And I got over it in a way that I feel like is a lot more mature and a lot more graceful and self-respecting than before. Because before, when I've fallen out of love, it was this just kind of like angsty, incel kind of attitude of like either being self-deprecating or just like lashing out or whatever, just a kind of unhealthy reaction. And that's not what happened. So I was sad for a couple days, and just kind of questioning some things and analyzing some things, but ultimately the conclusion was just whatever. Like, it didn't really, but like I truly accepted it and let it go, and like now I can 100% say I'm over it. There's no hard feelings, there's no lingering, like, whatever. It's not traumatic or whatever. Like, it's fine. It's fine. It is what it is. But her loss, really. And yeah, and I know a lot of people say that, and my past self included, would say it kind of insincerely or coming from a place that wasn't healthy. But when I say that now, I truly do just mean it like in a like healthy way. Like, yeah, it's her loss, whatever. Like, it's not. I shouldn't be suffering about it because of somebody else's decision. You know, that's her decision to make, and she could have made it right if she wanted to, and she could have reached out to me and done things differently, and she didn't. She could have apologized afterwards, but she didn't. So it's, that's on her. So now she's not going to know what it's like to be with me. So, her loss. And that's really, and from a place of self-respect too, like I don't care. It's not like my life isn't really affected by that. It's like, yeah, it would have been cool to have a girlfriend, but now it opens me up to other opportunities. And I've been fine this whole time being single, so what's a little bit more? You know? So I'm not upset about it. But that was an interesting experience to document, for sure. And so, in a way, it kind of reinforces that narrative that I've already had of, careful who I trust and who I let into my world, and people want to take advantage of me, because the part that kind of rubbed me the wrong way the most about that is just the timing, how, took such an interest in me and was so close to me while we were working together, and then as soon as she left the company, then it just, everything changed, and now I'm not in her world at all. So clearly it was motivated by, she just was just using me. So I really has probably dodged a bullet there anyway, because I don't really have room for that in my life. But yeah. So, but I'm confident that I'll meet someone, and I've done a lot of reflection too on myself and some of the reasons I've been single this whole time. And there's a lot of flaw in my character, and a lot of things socially that I've recognized, and that kind of also led me down this path of analyzing my past and myself, and really focusing on my upbringing and my childhood, which is, kind of stirs up some things that I've maybe kept sealed for many years, and not really opened up, but I feel like is kind of the healthy thing to do, is just to make peace with it and to just take it for what it is and learn from it and move on. And what I mean by that is just kind of how I was brought up. And there's a part of me still that resents my parents and family for how I was raised, because they had some level of awareness, and then also just some level of ignorance too, that is partly their responsibility. But I know the healthy thing to do is not to blame them and not to allow that to interfere with my relationship with my family. So for anyone that doesn't know, I was the youngest in my family. I still am. And I'm the youngest of 3 kids. So the oldest is my sister, who's 9 years older than me, and then my brother is 7 years older than me, and then me. So it's quite an age gap. So they basically acted as a second set of parents for me, more than siblings. And so, and my mom and dad were about 40 or so by the time I was born. My mom may have been 37 or something, and my dad 39 or something like that. And you know, just how I was raised was just very different because my sister was the first kid, and so it was exciting for them, and they documented everything, and it was exciting and everything, and then then my brother was born, and he was kind of the follow up, and they were pretty close together, and then there was two kids, and then I came like a while later, and by that point it wasn't anything new anymore, and so the novelty I feel like it kind of worn off. I had more time with my parents later on, like when I was a teenager, because my brother and sister moved out for a while. Ironically, they both moved back in, and I didn't. I moved out when I was 18, and I stayed out. But they both came back, but they were gone for a while when I was, a teenager. I was like 12 to 15, and so I got a little bit closer with my parents then. But for my childhood years, yeah, it was. I don't even know how to describe it to people, but my 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 parents, I guess their parenting style could best be described as antisocial or just awkward, really. So, I mean, first of all, I was homeschooled, and all three of us were. And so we didn't really leave the house much or socialize with people outside of the house much. So all we had to go by was just each other. And my parents worked from home mostly also. So we were just all home together, really. And my parents were each raised as Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s and the 80s, and in Pennsylvania. And so so that's kind of embedded that sort of lifestyle into their, um, uh, just like into their like mindset. But they ended up leaving the religion and rebelling against it to some extent, not fully, which is unusual because usually people do like a 180, but it wasn't not really. Just kind of left that religion, but still were like kind of loosely Christian based, but not really, and it's this whole like weird thing, and so they moved to Florida, and that's where we were born, um, and so I was raised as an agnostic. There wasn't really religion in the house. Like we didn't go to church or anything. Or we read the Bible sometimes, like never like cover to cover, but they would reference Bible verses and things. And again, it was just very weird because it was like I didn't really know like what to, categorize anything as, because they insisted they weren't religious, but it's like, well, the morality of the Bible, and but it's you kind of, I don't know, it was just kind of a interesting thing, but so so I was homeschooled and raised agnostic, and I've always had kind of my own sleep schedule, where I was mostly up at night, and that, like, my dad was always inconsistent with his sleep schedule. Always, he would be, up for 24 hours, and then he'd sleep for 24 hours, and be up for a couple hours, and sleep for a couple hours. There was never really any predicting when he would be awake or asleep, so it was just kind of random. And my mom was a little bit more consistent. She usually would wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night. Sometimes she'd stay up late with us, or she'd sleep in a little bit, but she never really slept in. Usually when she'd stay up late, she would just get less sleep. So she's kind of one of those people that just wakes up in the morning. Um, and then my brother and sister kind of, as they did their own thing, I guess. They had each other mostly. But yeah, I was very much a loner in every sense of the word. I lived in isolation, and so I would spend most of my time just in my room by myself. And I'd be awake while everyone else was asleep, and I didn't have access to the internet until I was about 14, 13 or 14. So, you know, I had a TV with a few channels, uh, and that was about it. So, I didn't. There weren't any instruments, any musical instruments in the house. So, I got a guitar when I was 14, but up until that point, there wasn't music, there wasn't the internet, uh, so I was just alone with my mind. And that's kind of a blessing and a curse, because a lot of good came from it in terms of my creativity and, uh, I think the way, but there's also a lot of negative too, and mostly just being, first of all, daydreaming and being preoccupied, like living in sort of an augmented reality and having trouble accepting the world for what it is. And then also just being socially inept, because those formative years is when you form those neural pathways and kind of know how to navigate the world and society. And I just never formed those. So, but the way that my parents, like their approach to socialization is, I feel like the thing that had the most impact on me is, and I feel like, and this stuff is really personal, so, it's kind of a sensitive topic, but I just feel like there was a lot of judgment. And it's only recently that I've actually like opened up and actually discussed this with my parents individually. They got divorced when I was 13. So I actually, ironically, I spent more time, I had more quality time with each of them individually after that. But, because when they were together, they kind of counteracted each other in a way. Like it wasn't, I didn't really have as many powerful memories with them individually. And they had, and I, of course, then that's a whole other rabbit hole I could go down about how I feel partly responsible for their divorce as well, because I feel like a lot of the things that a lot of their disagreements were over was raising me. And they both had different visions for what they wanted me to be and different parenting styles, and they would argue a lot over me. And so I know that's not my fault, but it's definitely a factor in it. But yeah, so yeah, it's just something that I've just now, like the last few months, actually like brought up and done more than just hint at. So I feel like at this point it shouldn't be any revelation. Like the cat's already out of the bag, and there's really no benefit to not talking about it at this point. So I feel like honesty is the best policy. But I've talked more so with my mom about it, because I feel like she took more of an initiative to guide me in my path to socialization, because my dad was he was always more like spontaneous and eccentric and more just kind of out of the box, so he didn't really like conform to very many conventions. He's kind of was just more whatever, doing his own thing. So he didn't really care about like, much outside of the house. He was just like, hey, as long as do your part in the family, and and you're good with the family, then you're fine. And my mom was more like, she kind of knew that it was important for me to know like how to talk to people and how to interact in society. And so, um, I being homeschooled, I wasn't part of any clubs or organizations I didn't have any friends outside of the house, or anyone like my age. I didn't have access to the internet or anything. So, um, you know, uh, I anytime we would be in public or have interactions. I feel like all my life I thought I was an introvert. I just assumed I was an introvert because I was like, man, I just like am fine being by myself, and I get anxiety around people, and I'm just more comfortable when I'm alone. So I just came to the conclusion that I'm an introvert. And the more I've really analyzed it, I realized that that's probably not entirely true. Like I've actually demonstrated a lot more qualities of being extroverted or ambiverted, I guess would be more appropriate. Because I love people, and I love being around people, and I love public speaking, and I love attention, and I love group settings and being in public and all that stuff. Like that's great. I love it. I like it more than being alone. You know. Um, and I feel like I'm healthier when I'm around people than when I'm left to my own devices. But I feel like the reason that I thought I was an introvert is because of what was instilled in me from a young age. And that's the sense of judgment and pressure and stigma. And my parents, they know by now, and that's part of the reason that I forgive them, if you want to say that, just for lack of better words. But the reason that I don't I don't resent them for it entirely is because I feel like they did have a change of heart or change of their character, where if they had to do it over again, I believe they would have done differently, and they're aware of what went wrong. And so to me, that's what matters the most, is that everybody makes mistakes. As long as we learn from it and we don't repeat it, then there's no reason not to forgive them. That's the way I see it. But so yeah, so I didn't really have much control over how I was raised, or what was instilled in me, or the habits that I formed, or and I don't mean to have this victim mindset, but it's true. I mean, when you're 5 years old, I mean, what how self self-aware are you really going to be? You just kind of are persuaded by your environment, and mostly authority figures, which in this case were just my parents and to some degree my older siblings. And so, yeah, I feel like with my mom especially, just because she kind of realized at a certain point that I needed to like get out in the world and talk to people, and it was something that I was, kind of on her parenting checklist, to make sure that by the time I was an adult, I had developed the ability for. So, anytime we were in public or out or whatever, because I didn't do anything like, I didn't go anywhere by myself. Everywhere I went was with them. So whenever I would find myself in any kind of social situation where I would be talking to someone, um, I just always felt like I was being watched, I was being judged, I was being, and then my mom would always talk to me about it afterwards, like, oh, well, he seemed nice, like you been, but oh, you should have asked him about, whatever, or done the, and I know, like, she means well. She never had any malicious intent. That's not what I'm claiming at all. But the effect that it had on me was just to make me extremely self-conscious and analytical, to the point that, that combined with being a loner and spending so much time alone and just being in my own mind. I feel like it was just not a good combination, and it just resulted in me spiraling into this thing that I never fully got out of, and at a certain point just accepted as reality. Um, and where I just I didn't want to talk to people because it just had such a stigma in my mind as just being like there's too much involved, there's too much to think about, and there's just too like it's too stressful, you know. And um, and so I just started thinking about like, well, how did it get like that? How did I become like that? And it's obvious. It's how I was raised. It's what was instilled in me by those experiences. And I feel like at the time they weren't really aware of it, but now that they've had time to reflect since these kids moved out and everything, and then they kind of see what happened. I feel like they realized it more. Um, but that continued even into my adolescence and being an adult. Um, I remember when I was probably 12, my mom made an effort to put me out in the world more, and so she enrolled me in this musical theater program at the college. Uh, I was ages 9 to 15, and so I was in some shows there for a couple of years, and that was really my first introduction to being alone with other kids my age. It was kind of the closest thing to public school that I had. But I mean, there were adults around. There were the instructors and whatever. So there were always adults like in sight. So I still had that kind of feeling of being like watched and supervised and whatever. And so, of course, me being completely socially inept, I didn't know, like, I had no gauge or filter or reference for what's appropriate or how, to react in situations or how to talk to people or distinguish anything. So I just crashed and burned, and there were a lot of uh, traumatic experiences there, with hard lessons that I had to learn, and my parents being called, and a lot of awkward conversations at home and things like that. And so after that, I really didn't want to talk to anyone, because I didn't want it was associated with trauma for me. So I felt like the best thing to do is just keep to myself, and if I don't interact with anyone, then I can't mess anything up, you know. And that was rough for a while, and then I eventually did dual enrollment. When I went to college, yeah, which I've talked about several times before. But when I was almost 15, I went in my first semester of college to get my associate's degree because it was free. Because I was for dual enrollment for a homeschool, I could get my associate's degree at the same time as I was doing FLVS for high school. So even though I already had finished my FLVS, because you could do it at your own pace, and I would do it at like 2 in the morning, and just knock out a whole module in one night. So I finished that ahead of schedule because I started when I was like 13, and I was done in a year and a half with 4 years of high school. So then I went to IRSC, I could just say, is the Indian River State College. Um, and really, I didn't want to go at first, and of course I made up these reasons of like, oh, I don't need college and that's stupid or whatever. But I feel like if I'm being honest with myself, the actual reason is I was scared of being in the world and having to interact with other people, and I didn't want a repeat of any of that. So ultimately what happened is my mom told me that she wanted me to go to college because she thought that it would be a good, it'd be good on my resume and it'd be good, whatever. But she didn't think I was ready, and she it's really brazen of her to say, but she was like, "Yeah, you're not ready um, socially. Like, I don't think you should be around people." Like, she actually said that. And I remember that's what really flipped the switch in my mind, where then I wanted to go just to spite her, just to prove her wrong. Like, oh yeah, well, put me in there. I will be the best, student ever. And so, and maybe that was some of her motivation, kind of reverse psychology. I don't think so, but you know, whatever. But in any case, that's what motivated me to want to go. And so then she was like, all right, I guess. And so yeah, so the college environment was way different than junior, middle school theater, because it's more like you're treated as an adult in college, So there's no supervision. It's more dignified, more respect, and the people are more mature and more uh, accepting, I guess. Like they're not 12 and 13-year olds, there's a big difference. It was adults that I was there with. So, but yeah, so that actually was a net positive experience, I would say. There, weren't really, I mean, nothing too bad, nothing too crazy. But yeah, I would spend all day at the campus. Like, I remember this one semester I had literally one class. It was just a class at 11 a.m. For an hour and a half, and then that was it. But I would be at the campus all day. I didn't have a car because I was 15, so I'd have my mom drop me off and call her when I was ready to be picked up because she lived like 10 minutes away. And so I what happened was there's this thing called a PERT test, and it's this three-part thing of reading, writing, and math, and you get a score in each one, and you got to pass each one, and that determines the classes that you can take. And so I passed the reading and the writing with flying colors, but the math I was a little bit short because I was never very good with algebra. So I had to retake that, and they're like, well, you can still take other classes, but you just can't take any math classes until you pass that, because there's a certain, you got to do 60 credits, and you could take math classes, but they wouldn't count toward the credits, and I'd have to pay out of pocket, and what all this stuff is like. You just got to pass the test. And so I discovered while I was walking the campus this thing called the ASC Lab, the Academic Support Center, and they have free tutoring. You could go in there and they have books you can study with and practice problems and everything, instructional videos, and they had tutors there to help with homework. And they had a reading and writing section, and they had a math section. So I walked into the math section one time and was like, hey, can you help me with algebra? And so they gave me this big book of 800 pages of everything you need to know about algebra and everything, all practice sections and whatever. And they were like, yeah, we're open 12 hours a day, and you can come by whenever, and we'll have this this book safe for you, and just grab a pencil and some headphones, and go ahead. And just call us over if you need help with anything. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I told my mom about it, and I was like, yeah, so I'm going to study up in the ASC lab until for this semester, and then retake the PERT test. And I retook the test a few times, and each time I would get a little bit closer, but I never fully passed it, because what it was is every time I would get a question right, the next question would be harder. So that's how it's designed. So that way I could never get too many in a row. But anyway, so I used that as an excuse to hang out at the campus all day, so that I didn't have to go home. And I didn't really think anything of it at the time, but looking back on it, that's a big problem. you know. Because it's not even like my life at home was terrible. I mean, it's not like I was like abused or anything, and it was like, like super dysfunctional household. I mean, it was fine. I just didn't want to be home. I just wanted because I wanted to be out and doing something different. And so it wasn't long before the studying kind of took a back seat, and I was just there. I would just walk the campus, and I would spend more time, taking a break than actually studying. And I'll go in there for like 10 minutes, flip some pages, and then go out and walk around and just try to start conversations with as many people as possible, to try to get over my fear. And yeah, I had some positive experiences out of it. I mean, nothing like too like I didn't like make any long term friends or anything, but I had some experiences that were like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad, and then others where it was more negative reaction, but nothing really too intense either way. Um, but I feel like I definitely like was useful because practice is the only way to get things like that. So, but anyway, so that's where most of my social skills were built. And just looking back on it, I was just such a weirdo, man. Like I could never just be just like chill, you know. I always had to be like either over the top, like just crazy high energy and like out of control, or I would just be like really like weird and self-contained and just like just like disturbingly quiet kind of thing, or I would be like just not like wrong thing at the wrong time kind of stuff. I just never could just like fit in and just be just like in a group and just be like all right, you know. So, and I was aware of it at the time. I just didn't really know like how to not be like that. So that's what I was trying to figure out, but nobody really like helped me with it because I didn't have anyone that I could go to for that. So everyone would just be like either humor me or patronize me or have a negative reaction or just ignore me or whatever. But I never really had like a friend that was like, "Hey man, this is, like that where I could like talk about these things in a way that I didn't feel judged or where there wasn't a lot where it wasn't high stakes. So yeah, so toward the end, I was there for like 12 semesters, and what eventually happened is that was for all of 2018 and 2019, and in the early days of my YouTube channel, actually, so you can kind of see kind of a lot of stuff is products of the time. And so when the pandemic hit, when COVID hit in March of 2020, they lifted the PERT requirements. So because I never passed the PERT test, I took it like 7 or 8 times, and so eventually they were just like, all right, you don't have to take that, you just automatically pass. So then I could take a math class. So then there was no reason for me to go to the ASC lab anymore. So I stopped going there, and everything was different after the pandemic anyway. When the campus opened, there was like social distancing, and you had to sit 3 chairs apart, and you had to wear a mask, and so it like the whole social scene was not the same. But by that point, I was more mature anyway. I was 17, so I was able to, I had more kind of common sense, and by that point, I was on the internet, and you know, so it wasn't really there weren't really any traumatic experiences after that. But but yeah, I still never really like could just be like cool socially. And really, to this day, I never fully conquered that, which is just ironic. It's crazy because like what I do for a living is go to people's houses and build rapport with them for 2 hours and sell them a 25-year contract, and I'm good at it. That's what's the crazy part is I'm like the best in the whole state at doing that. I'm the top salesperson in the top office of the top company in the in the hardest market. So like it's like I'm the last person that you would think of. Like you look at me in college or you look at me in the theater program or whatever, you'd be like, well, this guy definitely like he might work like night shift in a warehouse or something, like a factory, but there's no way he has a job that's like social, like commission based and it's based on people liking you and building rapport. Like there's no way. And so it just defies all logic. And still to this day, like I have remnants of that when I'm in public sometimes, or. But mainly when it surfaces is when I'm with my parents or I'm with my brother or sister, or mostly my mom more than anyone at this point. Because my dad is like he had his own kind of rules and whatnot, and he's definitely judging too. But he kind of did more of a 180, like after the divorce especially, where he became I saw a more social side of him, so it kind of standards relaxed a little bit. But my mom kind of maintained that sort of attitude. And so mainly whenever I'm with her, like either when I visit her or she visits me, mostly when she visits me, because then I feel more of a sense of like I'm the host, I'm the tour guide, I'm the whatever. So I feel more of a responsibility. But I still get awkward in social situations, and I still feel anxiety and whatever. But it's mostly when I'm around her, and now I know why. But it's definitely a fraction of what it once was, and it definitely is getting better like each month. And so I'm excited for the future. Look, I just looked at this. I have 1 minute left of recording before I run out of storage, is what it's telling me. So we're going to have to put a pin in this and do a part 2, which is okay because, like I said, we're going to have plenty of cool nights. But yeah, so I just want to wrap this up, make sure we're at a stopping point. But yeah, that just brings us to present day, where I still struggle socially, but not as much. And I feel a lot like I've come a long way. I'm a lot more confident now, and I value myself and respect myself more. And I know, like, I have a more solid self-identity where I know, like, who I am and what I believe and, how I live my life and what I want and, things like that that I feel are important prior to anything socially. But there's plenty more to talk about, and I probably will revisit this topic in the next Hammock chats. But I have 10 seconds left on here before it cuts out. So tune in for the next one. Thank you. Leave a comment and take care of yourself. Have a great night.